What is going on, everyone? Badger here. Be sure to like and sub, and let's get into this. The pattern is complete. Welcome, Warhammer fans, joining the club. It happened in the exact same way as every other franchise, for the most part, if not on maybe a sped up timeline, even though this apparently has been going on for a while. But ESG Devil Money is here, and then the company and its woke inhabitants capitulate. They take the ESG money and they change the lore. Now, I could be talking about Star Wars, The Lord of the Rings, whatever, right? Okay, so here in Warhammer in this case. But so the people in charge take the ESG money and then they change things in order to line up so they can continue to get that ESG money. And then when the fan base goes, wait a minute, that's not right. Why are you changing that? Why are you virtue signaling for this and this and this and this and this? And then when you ask those questions, you get called a racist and a sexist and a homophobe and an incel and a bigot. And it's funny, but it's not. It's actually really sad that most of the tweets that we were covering yesterday of the people upset about this all had to say, hey, I'm married, I have kids, I have all these things to stop from being attacked, their character attacked before what they were saying could even be listened to. And here we go. Here, this is, and the other part of this, right, is it's not just the company that will start calling you this, right? Remember when Lucasfilm attacked its own fans, right? Well, now, of course, Games Workshop is attacking its own fans, and now it's got its army of games media, journal media, all the same thing. They always pile on to help, and in this particular case, Bell of Lost Souls, which I've seen before for different things. But yeah, TTRPG site Bell of Lost Souls attacks Warhammer 40k fans as bigots for disliking Games Workshop changes to lore. So, and again, like I said, this is par for the course. This is how they do it. It's the same pattern in every other thing. In a move rather that many within the comic and gaming sphere will find familiar. Sorry, I didn't know. I wasn't said that. Yeah, in a move that many within the comic and gaming sphere will find familiar, Access media site Bell of Lost Souls came out hard yesterday in defense of Games Workshop's flagrant retcon of decades-old Adeptus Custodes lore. In a recent article titled Warhammer 40k Only Bigots Hate Female Adeptus Custodes, writer Abe Apfel published a vicious, hateful, and it was vicious, it was hateful, it was blatantly defamatory attack on Warhammer 40k fandom. In a mask-off moment, Bella Souls leaped headfirst into smearing the 40k fan base, exposing their own seething hatred for the fandom they try to profit off of. As Apfel begins his article with, "Oh no, women are coming to ruin 40k. The bigots need to get over themselves about female Adeptus Custodes." And as noted by many of you and other people, there were already women in it. It was just specifically the groups and abilities. It then goes on to give an extensive list of background female characters who've appeared in Warhammer 40k in recent years, which, according to him, are part of a recent push by Games Workshop to diversify their settings. Interesting enough, he never once mentions any of the more prominent examples of females within the Warhammer 40,000 setting, such as Adepta Sororitas, who goes back to the late 80s and who first made her first appearance as a full-fledged army in the late 90s during the second edition, nor does he mention the Anthema Sakana, aka Sisters of Silence, the female counterparts to the Adeptus Custodes. Right, so I guess it's not enough to have the counterpart. But not enough to have Miles Morales. He needs to actually be Spider-Man. You see, it's the same thing. Who make up 5 separate units, including a named character within the latest codex. So here's a bunch of different women. However, doesn't mention any of them because to do so would immediately undercut the central thesis that the Warhammer 40k fan base is made up of sexist and bigots, and that female representation in Warhammer 40k was all but non-existent until recent. When history shows that's not the case at all. On the contrary, there has been significant female representation in the setting, both in the background and on the tabletop going back decades. And this is also true in the gaming, comic, and movie industry, all the things, oh, very patriarchal. And it's like, what? There's a bunch of anyway, that's the point. They like to ignore all that. And the fans who are most up in arms about the changes to the Adeptus Custodes lore have long requested expansions to both the Sisters of Battle and the Sisters of Silence ranges. One of their chief concerns with the lore changes is that the addition of a female Adeptus Custodes could potentially lead to the erasure of all female forces like the Sisters of Silence. Well, I wouldn't worry about that because they only do this in one direction. There's all women. They're all right. If there was an all black unit, they'd be all right with like that. It's only if there was an all white, which I don't know why you would have, but they don't want all of any of either white or male. Certainly not white or male. Everything else, you do whatever you want. They don't care about segregation in that. In fact, they advocate for it many a time. That's what they call their safe spaces. It just means either no men or no white men, basically. So I wouldn't worry about the Sisters of Silence being touched at all. Continuing to demonstrate Bull's seething vitriolic hatred of the 40K fan base, Apfel writes, as seems to happen every time Games Workshop takes a step to be more inclusive, to get more people into the hobby, some bigots on the internet are mad. No one was going to suddenly start playing for a Warhammer of any fucking variety or number after it just because you changed one unit. All that was going to do was piss off your loyal fan base that like is a lore whore, basically. And it was like, don't touch lore, don't change it unless you absolutely have to. So, and especially as been pointed out, there's already the female equivalents of that exact group, basically. To get more people into the hobby, some bigots on the internet are mad. In a number of online spaces, including comments on our website, people have come out to protest this update. In general, they position themselves as guardians of the lore. Yeah. Maybe even a few people reading this are in this position. I would say the majority of them. You might be about to tell me how you're not a bigot at all. You simply really care about 40K lore and its sanctity. He continued, but you know what? Save your breath and take a seat. By the way, remember, you got to stop giving your money and attention to people that hate you. This is probably how the majority of them think. You save your breath and take a seat. The truth is that 40K has never cared one bit about the internal consistency of its own lore. There have been countless retcons and changes galore from the very first days of 40K. Indeed, 40K is specifically written so that there is no truth and perfect narrators are the norm, and that everything can and often does change at a moment, and yet people still get mad about only a small subsection of these things. Apfel's argument defending Games Workshop falls apart here because, as he mentioned previously, he intentionally sidestepped any mention of the large number of female representation that already exists in the game. So when he claims that it always seems to be when women get introduced that you see anger popping up on the internet, that's an attempt made by Apfel to gaslight his readers, as there was no anger whatsoever when Sisters of Battle, Sisters of Silence, female inquisitors, or female modders were introduced. It's the exact same target. Sorry, I'm just to point this out. It's the exact same shit they did in Star Wars. No one said a goddamn negative thing when Mace Windu, Sam Jackson was Mace Windu. When Finn came out and everyone was like, "Oh, you're racist." It's like, no, because they were confused. They thought stormtroopers were still clones at that point. Not they weren't offended that he was black. And the same thing with the Charmin Obey-Chinoy when she announced her movie and said all that inflammatory shit about liking to make men uncomfortable. It wasn't, no one cared that she was a female because no one reacted that way when Patty Jenkins got her Rogue One movie, or her Rogue Squadron movie that apparently she's working on. So my point is, this is a very common gaslighting where they claim that, oh, you're just mad because of this, even if there's plenty other examples of more or less the same thing happening, but in a different or better context. So it ignores, like I said, no one said shit when there were all these female characters here. On the contrary, the anger in the 40K fan base surrounding those armies revolved around the lack of support. Whether it's the long years when the Sisters of Battle went without range refresh and were forced to use metal models cast in the 90s, and in some editions forced to use a digital codex because Games Workshop couldn't be bothered to publish a proper codex book for them, to the Sisters of Silence being forced to use a single kit to make 3 units for a fan base that's supposedly made up of sexist and bigots, as Apfel claims. They've long shown themselves to be incredibly supportive of Adeptus Sororitas and the Anthema Sacana. Yeah. Bowles then goes on to make several intellectually dishonest lore arguments to justify their defamation of the 40K fan base, such as claiming that the introduction of female Adeptus Custodes is no different than the recent introduction of the Rogal Dorn battle tank. And while it's true that the Rogal Dorn was never mentioned before, neither was it explicitly excluded. And as they've read plenty of lore, it was pretty much like it said that they came from the volunteered sons of royalty, the Adeptus. Anyway, no piece of lore ever published had ever stated the tanks found Yeah, so there was nothing saying they couldn't be there. While there was something, to the contrary, the lore has been extremely consistent on the point that the Imperium has access to a bewildering array of vehicles and war machines. So it would make sense that new technology. And then I just wanted to go down here. This is the real thing, is these are the people you're calling bigots, right? These are the people you're calling bigots when you go down here. Some of these are assholes, but some of them are. Another activist, Warhammer fan, accused artists in pop culture of being only. Nope, which must be very disappointing for you to find out. I know, no matter how often I get asked, begged, or absolutely never be setting up. So they're just throwing shade. Just throwing shade at everyone. This is the one I wanted to read. She says, "Let me be real. It was very difficult growing up a lesbian with a Japanese mother. Very. Can't paint minis because of disability. I've read 40 plus I'm assuming that's Horus Heresy, HH novels in recent years. It is an escape. I dislike Femme Custodes. It hurts when they call me a bigot. I just like established lore." And that's the real thing. When you paint people like this, that's it. The very few people that are actually, I'm wondering if there's anyone actually upset, because I think they're really, because it's pointed out, there's plenty of females that they're upset that you are changing an established war where they specifically say that they're all men and they're from the children of the rich, whatever. As these screenshots show, it's clear where the sexism and even racist toxicity within the Warhammer community and Games Workshop fandom is coming from, and it isn't from the people who want to see the lore respected. Rather, it's the activists who viciously smear and attack anyone who disagrees with them, just as Bowles has viciously smeared and attacked the vast majority of Warhammer 40K fandom with his repugnant article. Those vile screeds directed at female hobbyists by those who share the same political persuasion by Apfel and his editors will, of course, go unreported, who will instead continue to launch divisive blind item attacks directed at the entirety of the 40K fandom. And here we go. And this is the end of it. Is the people that take this over, listen to this. I do kind of think it's worth the destruction of franchises. If that's what it takes to get certain people out, right-wingers should not be allowed to have a community anywhere. They should not be a part of our society because they think everyone is a right-winger, everyone is alt-right to them. Their politics are so extremely left that everyone is to the right of them. So if you're just a traditional progressive person, even if you have no problem with gay people or trans people, you just want your lore left alone, nope, sorry, you are a bigot. And that's the name of the game. As I hope I showed, they've done that in almost every other franchise. It is the same exact thing. In some cases, the same exact people. We just saw it in Gamergate. They won't stop. And as far as I'm concerned, the only people that should not be a part of our society are these type of activists, because they are fucking it up for everyone. Let me know what you think of this. Make sure to like, share, and sub. If you've done that, thank you. If you're going to do that, thank you. And stay strong, Warhammer 40Ks. Embrace the bigotry. Just embrace it.
Well, bye.